Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you may be in. Thank you for listening to our daily light points. You know, coming out of yesterday, I had a few people, working with my client and then even outside of my client, show me some, authentic interest and understanding this distinction of why yesterday was special for some and completely oblivious to others. Right? July 4th, 1776. We call that our Independence Day as a nation. Then you have Juneteenth, more specifically June 19th, 1865. That is now a federal holiday, like our National Independence Day. But all too often, given its perceived newness, coupled with the lack of understanding, I am approached with inquiry from my clients around what do I do about this day? Right? What does it mean? What is its significance in the context of how I drive inclusion across my business, equity across my business? And while that could go down a huge rabbit hole, I just want to clarify the distinction of and significance of that day. Imagine being under rule by another nation. Imagine being constrained by their social construct. Imagine being constrained by their rules, laws, and regulations, but still maintaining some relative liberty as human beings, but under rule by a country. Imagine being 13 colonies under that rule, and then finally breaking free, being able to hold as sovereign states. Well, that's what we celebrate when we broke away from British rule, right? Independence Day. We made it a national holiday. We mobilize around this day. We acknowledge the importance and significance of it. Now, let's fast forward. Imagine being an enslaved people, not only being under rule, but being under full and complete control with no liberties or very, very few liberties. And imagine even after abolition of slavery, still being under the constraints of slavery. And then finally, a couple years later, after law was declared, starting in Texas, the general says, you know what, we need to acknowledge this as federal law. We need to respect it as law, and we need to move accordingly. By federal law, enslavement is no longer justified or legal. That's what that day in June represents. The celebration of the abolition and acknowledgement that slavery was unjust and illegal. And even after that, many, many more years before various states, organizations, and people acknowledged the illegality relative to the enslavement of people. So if we can celebrate independence in the manner that we have, that we call July 4th or Independence Day, then it makes very good sense to celebrate emancipation from slavery. This day is not just designed for people of color or people who have ancestors who were enslaved. The day is meant to celebrate this acknowledgement as human beings that enslavement of another human being is not only illegal, but immoral. It's not just a day for people of color, it's a day to acknowledge those who find it important to celebrate this independence. Independence from enslavement, well, that's an acknowledgement that is important and necessary for many people. So just like those who don't decide to celebrate July 4th or Independence Day or National Independence Day, there are those who decide not to celebrate Juneteenth. But for those who acknowledge it, now it's federally protected. Individuals can't be limited in their desire to celebrate the specific day or in commemoration for what was officially declared on the national stage as acknowledgement that this is illegal and can no longer be supported by law. Not just the federal law, but when we have statutory acknowledgement that this is something that is illegal and immoral. I say all that to say, if we open ourselves up to the general perspective, take all our ideologies, take all of our social stance or political stance aside, and you just look at the premise. I didn't mention race, ethnicity, creed. I just said the premise behind those holidays and why they're important. It's rational to understand why, from an inclusion or equity standpoint, we want to leave space for all of these acknowledgments. And I could speak to other holidays under similar context, Cinco de Mayo and others. So I just encourage us to open ourselves up to the perspectives, seek to understand, and I think we could come together as a people with some sense of respect and empathy for the things that we navigate each and every day. Hopefully you found this insightful. I'm not an encyclopedia, so if I misspoke in anything, dates, years, I apologize. I'm doing my best. I'm channeling my, history a bit, but I just want to put it in perspective in simple forms, the importance of celebrating Independence Day for all individuals and what it means to them to be liberated, to be freed, to be outside of rule, to be outside of dictatorship, to be outside of our capacity as free human beings to live our lives. With that being said, thank you for tuning in. I know this is a longer light point, but I just wanted to make this point. Real leaders, real talk, real time. That's what we're all about at the LightPoint podcast. We'll talk soon.